Okay, this video is going to continue the introduction to variables. We started on page 1. We went through the variables. We talked about naming them. We talked about variable data types, declaring a variable, and now we're going to actually go down to page 2. However, we're not going to talk about assignment yet, although we have talked about assignment, but we'll fill in these notes at another time. Today we're going to go down to variable call. Actually, we're going to go to number 6 on our notes, and what we need to do is talk about this because this is coming up as we go through this code that we've been looking at. So variable call is what we're going to look at. But before we get going there, let's take a look at this code that we've been looking at. And so what we need to do is we need to fill out what happened with line 8, 9, 10, and 11. And so in line 8, not only did we was the data type and the variable declared, the memory or the storage location was reserved. Now we want to actually type a value in there. So in the total points season is given the value 0. So you should write a 0 in there. In line 9, first half points is given the value to store as being 8. And then line 10, it gives the second half points variable the storage location to hold a 7. Now the one in line 11, total points game, is given a calculation. So you can assign a calculation, which we'll talk about next time more, that you can assign a calculation to be stored inside of the storage location. And so what we could do for now is just go first half points plus, whoops, I'll go plus total points game. Okay, that happens. Okay, there we go. And so it's really a calculation is what it is. Now I did that wrong. So first half points plus is supposed to be second half points. Wow. Okay. There we go. All right. So those things, those 4 declarations and initializations or assignments have been taken care of, and this is what the computer does. Now we're actually on line 11 because line 11 has something that we haven't really discussed yet, and so before we talk about those here, we're going to give you some definitions. So back to our notes, variable call. Variable call, which I'm going to use VC a lot of times to stand for variable call because variable call is just too long. And so example, let's say you have a print statement that says system.out.println num of tacos. The question I would ask, why I asked the class, is this a string? Well, it's not a string because there are no quotation marks, so it's not going to print num of tacos. Well, then what is it going to print? Well, you can tell by the look of this that this is the name of a variable, a storage location. So somewhere there's a storage location that has the number of tacos in it. So I'm going to pause for a second. Okay, so here's an example. So you have a memory location called num of tacos here, and so this is the name of it. Here's the actual storage location, and it's storing a 5. And so it says system.out.println num of tacos. We already said that it's not going to print num of tacos because it's not doesn't have quotes. It's not a string. So the variable num of tacos is actually being called, and so a variable call then requests a let me see. I got to pause here for a second. Well, I'm not going to pause. I got something that's in the way. Okay, so it requests, okay, so here's what happens here. Let's get back into this. So a variable call requests the value or the data from the storage location of a variable. It requests the value or the contents or the data from the storage location of the variable. So here's the variable num of tacos. It's storing a 5, that's its value, and so this variable call is actually calling the variable, the name, the storage location. So the compiler is the one that goes and looks in the computer memory to find the name num of tacos. And so then it goes, the value or the contents of the variable is returned to the variable call. It's returned to the variable call. So this 5 is returned to num of tacos. And so it's returned, and so here it is. And so now it says print not num of tacos, but it's going to print the 5 is what it's going to do. And then the variable call is when the contents of a variable's storage location are used. Remember, we said you don't store your socks in your sock drawer just to store them there. You store them so you know where they are, so you can go get them when you need them, so you can use them. And in the same way, here's what happens with the rental car facility that relates to this, and hopefully this will help people understand this better too. We said that sometimes maybe they have an attendant that goes and gets a car for the renter. So the renters have filled out all their paperwork and they're ready for the car. Well, so then the attendant is asked to go and they're told, okay, go to A1 and get the Ford Focus out of there. So they come into the parking lot, which we're saying is the computer memory. It's got a bunch of parking spaces, and it's in the parking lot. It's looking for the one that's named A1. And when the attendant finds A1, he knows that he's got the data that's being asked for. And so the Ford Focus is backed out and driven over here to the renters. Why is it given to the renters? So the renters can use the car. And so the Ford Focus isn't stored in this parking space just to be there. It's parked in this storage space so that somebody knows where to get it by the name of the parking space, and then it can be retrieved and returned so that it can be used by the renters. And so that's essentially what's going on. So if we go back to, let's just make sure that we got our notes taken care of. So you should have all this filled out. So let's go to our code and see what happens. So variable call is what we're talking about. We come down to 11. This memory location has been reserved as total points game. It's stored to handle ints, but it's storing a calculation. So notice this, it says it's assigned first half points. Well, first half points is the name of a variable, so we call this a variable call. So don't just call this a variable. It's different. Here the variable is being established as the name of a storage location. Here this is already been established, so it's not just a storage location, it's actually calling for the contents. And so the compiler goes into the computer memory and looks for first half points and finds first half points right here, and it comes back with its contents or its value, and so it returns the value to the variable call. And so this is an 8. Then the next item here is on the other side of the plus sign is the second half points, and so this is a variable call. The compiler goes up in here into the computer memory and looks for second half points, finds that in here, and it returns the 7 back to the variable call. And so this is a variable call, and the returned value is 7. And so now the compiler then can add the 8 and 7 together and get us up with 15, and then what's being assigned to total points gained is the result of a calculation. So the 15 is stored in total points gained, and it's stored here so it can be used later on. So the variable call is when values of and contents of storage locations are used. So you notice in line 9, 8 was stored in here. Well, why? Well, so it could be used later, and it's used right here in line 11. It's used as part of a calculation. And now we know that this 15 is most likely going to be used later on. In fact, we should be able to tell. If you looked at your code, can you tell where is the 15 in the total points game going to be used? Well, what you basically do is look for the name. Well, here's total points game right here. So this 15 is going to be used as part of a calculation to come up with the total points in the season. Well, is there another place it's being used? Yeah, here's another variable call for total points gained, and that's also going to be returned to be 15. So here it's going to be used in a print statement. So it's going to actually display the contents of the storage location on the screen. Alright, so that's the variable call. That is the idea. Let's go on to the next part, and that would be well, let's just discuss circle of life just for kicks. Circle of life of a variable is it first gets declared. Okay, so first gets declared. That's when the storage location is reserved, named, and set up to handle a certain type of data. The next thing is it is assigned. Okay, so it's declared. That's like when it's born. And then it's assigned. It's given a value or data that is stored. So value or data is stored there. And then the last thing is it's called. So it's declared, assigned, and called. And the called is when the data is used. So that's kind of the circle of life and for the variable. And so here's an example. So we have the num of tacos again. So here we have the num of tacos is being declared in, so it's being reserved. You have a cell that's being reserved, and it's going to say num of tacos. I'm not going to write it all out because it would take too long. So I'm going to go num of tacos, and it's handling ints. And so what happens is that's the declaration. Okay, it's been born. This is it, like that. Now the other part of the statement is it's been assigned the value 5. And then later on in the program, somewhere along the line, it says print num of tacos. Well, num of tacos is not a string, so it goes and finds num of tacos in the computer memory. It returns the 5 back. So it's really this is 5. It's the value. And so now the contents of this variable are printed or displayed on the screen. So birth, declaration, and then assigned, and then called or used. And that's the idea with a variable call. Alright, let's go ahead and actually, just to prove that this is really true, I probably should compile this and run it, and there's the 5. That's what happened. Alright, so let's go to this. We're going to talk about concatenation because concatenation is something, again, that we're going to be using an awful lot. And so we run into that concatenation down here when we're printing, and so that's why we're discussing this now. Now it's important on this note, this here notes, or these code, that you write something in. This right here, this is a plus sign, of course, everybody knows that. And this is called an addition operator. Okay, it's an addition operator because it operates the addition of two values. And on one side is an operand, and then you have the addition operator, and then you have this is called an operand. So these are called operands on either side of the plus sign. So the plus sign here again is adding. It's an addition operator in this case, and it's adding the two operands together. So this is something you should write in your notes. And then you come down here and you see a plus sign again. And so you will take a look. Here we have a plus sign. Now this is what we call a concatenation operator. So you could write this down in here. So I'll write it down. It's concatenation operator. Oh, crumb. Oh, I blew it. Okay, so let's go here. Oh, seriously? So it's a concatenation operator. Wow, this is really weird. This is really giving me fits here. Really? Okay, so anyways, I'm gonna just delete all this so I get back to normal. Alright, so this is a concatenation operator. On both sides of this concatenation operator are called operands. But it doesn't add those together because it doesn't make sense to add a string to a number. And so what it does is it concatenates. Let's look at our notes, see what happens. So concatenation, for example, period, string plus 4 is not going to, you can't add those things together. And so an operand, which we already talked about, is on each side of the what did I want to say here? Yep, I did want to say it. Is on each side of the concatenation operator. And so what we've just done in that one sentence is we've established that this, which we already talked about, that this is one operand, this is one operand, here's the plus sign, which is the concatenation operator. It operates concatenation. Concatenation, and here's the main thing, it joins two operands together. It joins two operands together. It doesn't add them, it joins them. So here's the first operand, and then here's the second operand. Now they're joined together and they become one. They become period 4. That's what that is. Now if you were to, now we've done this before where we joined, where we did an operand of adding, well, let's do this. Let's go plus 5. And so what happens here is, if we look down here, if more than one concatenation operator is there, then the compiler moves from left to right, joining one pair of operands at a time. And so here's the first pair of operands. Well, that first pair of operands joins the period and the space and the 4, and so it's period plus period 4. Now what we have left is a concatenation of period 4 and 5. And so it takes the first operand is period 4, and then it joins the 5 to the period 4. It joins it. It doesn't add it. It joins it together. It connects it so it becomes period 45. All right, so that's how concatenation works. So what we want to do is we want to go back and look at our notes here at the code, because we're going to write some things on here which I think are important. Let me see. Can I go forward? Yes, I can. All right. Now, my question to you is, what is points in game 1's colon space? What is that? And you would tell me it's a string. So here's a string, and then it's adding. And what is total points gain? Well, you should know from earlier that that's not a string. It's the name of a variable, so it is a variable call. You can just put VC. That's good enough. Now the variable call, of course, is going to actually be the value of that variable. So it's really total points gained, we said, I think was 15. All right, so what it's going to do is this, we can't add a string and a number, so this is a concatenation operator. Concatenation means to join, and so what this is going to print, because this is the argument of this println method is a concatenation. Now before it was always just a string, and so now it's actually, we're printing a concatenation. That's the argument. The argument contains a string and a variable call joined together. And so the string is points in game 1 colon space. That's the first thing it prints. And then it's going to join to that the 15. So that's what it'll print. Points in game 1, 15. Right, so that's how concatenation works. And so you're going to have concatenation down here in 16. It's going to print points this season, and then it's going to give the total points in the season, which up to this point, this is the first game, so it's going to be just 15 again. All right, so that, I believe, let me just make sure here, is all that we want to talk about, and we'll move on to assignments at our next session. You should be ready for tonight's homework assignment, or chapter 2B.